Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Tonight's guest is generally not shy about saying what he thinks, and tonight we're going to ask him about the Trump presidency, Eric Adams as mayor, and his latest role as moderator of a forum with mayoral candidates. As the chair of the Senate's Health Committee, he has opinions on Robert Kennedy Jr.'s appointment as Secretary of Health and Human Services. We'll also talk to him about the upcoming budget season and a whole lot more. Please join me in welcoming back to Bronx Talk from the 33rd Senatorial District, which includes a whole host of Bronx neighborhoods. It is Senator Gustavo Rivera. Nice to have you with us, sir.
Pleasure to be here. How much time you got, by the way? You mentioned a lot of things that we got to talk about.
Yeah, and you have a lot to say. We know that.
But I'll try to talk quickly.
I'm going to take some time here to do something.
Yes.
This is show number 1486 in the 30 years I've been doing Bronx Talk.
1,486,
1,486, and in 14 more, that means we will have number 1,500.
Yes.
So what I did to celebrate your appearance here, I made a list of all your appearances on Bronx Talk. Do you want to guess how many?
I'm going to say, well, I've been here
Maybe
for 15 years. I'm going to say 32.
22 appearances. I printed out the list. You can take it home, cherish it.
Why, thank you.
And see,
Thank you, Gary.
You debated here 4 times.
I did, yes.
And this will bring up, and there are some elected officials that you probably don't get along with, who you were on the show with.
Yes. Yes.
And
Oh,
I'm not going to mention who they are, but I thought that would just be a little way of introducing you here in your 22nd
Thank you so much,
on
sir.
Bronx Talk.
Thank you so much.
There you go. Well, let's just get started. With the most obvious, your thoughts on President Trump's State of the Union address to Congress last night.
I didn't watch it because I didn't need to. I know what the plans are, and I think that this is, we all knew that this was going to be what the federal government, what this administration is trying to do to the federal government and American people is disastrous. They're trying to to speak very, very bluntly, they are attacking the basic democratic institutions of our country. They're trying to destroy the civil service. They're trying to curtail rights for minorities and and just vulnerable populations everywhere. And so I didn't need to see that torture porn for an hour or however long he spoke. I know who he is. I've always known who he is. And my job is to make sure that I both legislate and on an everyday basis protect my neighbors and my constituents.
What are the biggest dangers to your constituents and your districts? What are the things that you say, you know what, I got to deal with this in some form? Some of it seems almost too difficult to deal with.
So the most immediate, well, the first thing that people have to remember is that the chaos is the point, right? There's as many things that they're trying to do. They're trying to flood the zone, as they say, to try to confuse us. So I focus on the basic and most important things. One of the things that they did from the beginning is they're attacking immigrants across the country. I have a lot of people in my district, both documented and undocumented, who are currently scared because of the actions of the federal government, because of the types of raids that are happening, ICE raids all over the country. This is not about identifying people who are people who might be accused of a crime and be immigrants, but instead to criminalize immigration, period. I think the actions of the administration speak for itself in that regard. So my job, as I see it, is certainly to protect those folks. I think you're going to talk about this in a little bit.
We could do it right now.
I can do it right now. This is something you should reach out to my office. We can actually make this available to you. This is a Know Your Rights card. It has 2 sides, both English and Spanish, and it has 2 sides. You can cut it right down the middle. This is for those folks who are undocumented. These are what your rights are. Because regardless of what they say at the federal level, if you live in the country of the United States, you have constitutional protections as well. There are rights that you have. So this is something that you can keep for yourself, so you know what your rights are. And this is in the situation that you might find yourself with an ICE agent. This is something you can hand over to them to not answer their questions.
And how to behave. And
how to behave.
How to deal with it. Now, in order to get it, they can just simply pick them up at your office?
They can pick them up at my office, but most importantly, my office is 2432 Grand Concourse. That's 187th in the Concourse. But call the number to my office, which is 718-933-3733. 2034 right there on your screen. Tell us how many you need. We'll make them available for you, and so you can come pick them up at the office.
You know, it goes back to, in a way, what we do here. Information helps.
Yes, sir.
And having, important information, reliable information helps. You were pretty straightforward about Eric Adams and the fact that it appears to many that there's a quid pro quo.
It's not appearance, Gary. This is not an
believe
appearance.
it's true?
Oh, I think that they made it quite, the federal government, well, I'm going to let you finish your question, but I don't think there's a question
I want to
about
put
this.
your quote up on the screen.
Yes, sir.
Eric Adams, you said Eric Adams should resign. He has demonstrated that he is unfit to lead the greatest city in the world. His corrupt actions prove that he's willing to sell himself to the highest bidder, which denotes a profound lack of moral compass and the commitment needed to be the mayor of New York City. You put that out very directly, unabashedly.
Certainly did.
Why don't you give a little background about it?
So let's be clear on what is actually going on. And this is the thing, this is not something that we're guessing is happening. The federal government, this federal administration, to back up for a second, obviously, so Eric Adams is under scrutiny, under a lot of scrutiny for alleged corrupt actions. So he's been under investigation, and then he was indicted. This is an indicted person who has to go through a legal process. So he made it very clear that he would potentially be willing, wink, wink, to be helpful to the federal government if they lessened his charges. And so, hold on, the federal government put out a statement, put out a memo in which they said clearly, he was spending too much time dealing with these charges, so we're going to instruct the judge and the Department of Justice to drop the charges, so that he can focus himself fully on helping us with our immigration dragnet. And to finish for a second, there are, at this point, something like 6 or 7 career Republican members of the Justice Department who quit because they did not want to do this. This is a quid pro quo, clear as day, and let's not call it anything else.
I thought what was interesting is that one of the reasons given was that they thought it would interfere with his campaign, and the second reason given was what President Trump had said about his own legal situation, is that this was a political hit. They used the same logic and the same explanation for why they thought it was unfair for him to be charged.
And let's actually see the results of what this is. Like what has happened here is that Eric Adams has opened the door to the federal government so that, and let's be clear, this is a federal government that has made it very clear that they would not stop at the doors of a church, the doors of a hospital, the doors of a school. They have made it clear that they will seek out these pests, as they say, as they call them. This dehumanizing language and these dehumanizing actions by the federal government are being facilitated by a mayor who is beyond reproach. He should resign or he should be removed.
One of the things I wanted to just ask you about, and then we'll move on. You had said a moment ago that he made it clear that he would work with the federal government.
Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge.
So
yes.
you, in other words, I haven't seen him say that. There has been a shift in his tone and his policy over immigration.
Shall we go back to the fact that a black mayor of an incredibly important African American bastion up in the Northeast chose on the day of Martin Luther King Day, which is a celebration which many of us take incredibly seriously in this city, as he has in the past, instead of actually visiting the many churches that he claims to be, to be friendly to, etc. He chose to go to the inauguration. He chose to go and kiss President Trump's bottom. That's what he did. He went there to show his obeisance on Martin Luther King Day. If that's not a clear enough, and then regardless of what happened before, the memo that the Justice Department put out, which clearly said, but because again, there's something else. It was the Justice Department or the administration said you should drop these charges without prejudice. Now, what that means for the layman is that these charges can come back any time. There's a threat there. There's basically, we're going to make these charges go away, baby. But are you going to play ball? Because if not, we'll make them come back. And that, again, quid pro quo, he should not be mayor.
I want to move forward and talk about the mayoral forum that you hosted, which was interesting. He did ask me for my input on how to do it.
And he gave me some pointers. I tried to do my best. I tried to do my best Gary impression.
Why did you and the Unity Democrats decide to put together that kind of forum?
Well, the Unity Democratic Club, which is a growing and very proud to say I was one of the founding members. I'm not part of its leadership. I'm a paying member, but I was one of the founding members of it because I think that there's a new progressive voice in the Northwest Bronx that they are ahead of, and you know, some of the folks there had found over the years that unfortunately the Ben Franklin Democratic Club had kind of tried to, you know, quiet their voices, and they thought, you know, we want to do something to involve more people to make it broader, and so they started this club. And I've been very happy to be a part of it. And so I thought that it was important that we get mayoral candidates up in the Bronx talking about Bronx issues. And so it was an opportunity. I pitched it to them and I said, we should do this. And we started putting it together. And they asked me to moderate, and I was happy to do it. And again, as I said during the, and it was very well attended. It was a phenomenal event, even on a cold night. But my job there was not to be a partisan. It was to kind of just keep the trains running, as you've done many, many times, to try to keep the questions going, try to engage them in conversation, and give them an opportunity to make a pitch directly to leaders in the Northwest Bronx and to constituents in the Northwest Bronx about why they should be chosen to lead the city and the Bronx.
Did you find a candidate in your own mind who you were ready to talk about yet, or not yet?
Listen, I've not made a decision about who I'm going to be choosing. I should tell you this. I want to make sure that everybody remembers that this is a ranked choice election. Therefore, I'll remind you that back in years ago when the first ranked choice election happened, I was one of the first folks to make a ranked choice endorsement, and so it's likely that I'm going to do something like that. But what I can tell you is that people should not rank Cuomo, do not rank Cuomo, and do not rank Adams. Not only not vote for them, don't rank them.
Neither Andrew Cuomo nor Adrian Adams, who just announced for mayor just the other day,
yes,
or as recently as yesterday, I think, or even it was in the papers this morning. We're recording this, by the way, on Thursday the 6th. Do you have a feeling about either of them being candidates in comparison to what you saw that night?
Well, as I saw, don't rank Cuomo, and we can get into a lot of conversations about how terrible he was as a governor, regardless of what he's trying to tell you.
You were in the Senate when he was governor.
Yes, and we'll get to that in a second. But to speak about Adrian Adams, so Adrian as a speaker, she's somebody who is well respected, certainly among the political class and among her colleagues in the council. It's going to be interesting to see how she makes a case this late in the game. She has to get on the ballot. She has to raise money. She's certainly credible, and she certainly would make a much better governor, a much better mayor than Eric Adams, certainly. But I'm not sure if I'm going to be supporting her. But I think that she's a solid candidate, and
she's a credible candidate.
Absolutely, unlike Andrew Cuomo. You want to talk about Andy?
I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but you can have a sentence or two if you'd like.
I could have more than a sentence, but I will make it quick. Folks, don't fall for the okie doke. Don't let yourself be fooled. He's trying to rewrite history. I'm just going to give you a brief, just top line of the things that he did. I was elected the same year that he was elected as governor, so I served the entire time that he was here, and I certainly was one of the folks who became one of his biggest critics towards the end of his career. Before he left in disgrace. This is somebody who has been accused credibly of sexual harassment. Various reports have found that he has broken civil laws. He has spent $28 million of your taxpayer money to defend himself in court and to attack the women that have brought the allegations against him. When it comes to COVID, you not only have somebody who established a nursing home policy that very likely killed people in nursing homes, he lied about the number of deaths and tried to hide that. We're talking about somebody who cut, a year before COVID, cut Article 6 funding. This is public health programs to the tune of $62 million just to slap Bill de Blasio in the face. This is somebody who made a decision to not position a vaccination distribution site on 10458 as a political backlash to me. Because I represent that district, because I represent that zip code. He did not want to do it there, and I have somebody who was in the room when he was making that decision. Whether you're talking about the fact that Campaign for Fiscal Equity, millions and millions of dollars owed to educational institutions that the Court of Appeals said that they were owed, and it took us to pressure him almost his entire tenure before he left for him to make good on the promise to actually get this money thing.
Yeah.
So you're talking about millions for a book that was written mostly by staffers to claim that he was this great leader during the COVID administration. The Moreland Commission, which he established to root out corruption, and as soon as they started looking into him, disbanded it. Folks, this is just a top line. Do not let him rewrite history. He is not an effective manager. He is not an effective leader. He is a toxic, abusive bully who actively did things that hurt you, your family, Bronxites. Don't rank Cuomo.
I sure wish elected officials who came on this program would really say what they think.
Sometimes, there's some of us who are shrinking flowers.
I guess so. On that note,
Oh, me being a shrinking flower? Very good. There you go.
on a related note, we had 2 measles cases in New York State, 3 in New Jersey. We know the number was over 160 in Texas. I think we have a quote of what you said about RFK Jr. is dangerously unqualified to lead the largest public health institution in our country, yet this doesn't seem to matter to 52 Republicans who picked loyalty to Trump over the health of millions. RFK did come out recently and said he supports the measles vaccine. Does that make you say, well, maybe we're
too little,
do a
too
little
late?
better?
You have somebody who has made his career over certainly the last decade and a half. I remember seeing him in Albany more than a few times, and we were trying to establish policies around vaccinations and fighting us all the way on it, because he's somebody who believes that vaccines cause autism or some other nonsense. The science is clear. Vaccines work. Vaccines are necessary, and what he has done over his career, and certainly this is an example of it, once you have a certain level of vaccine, when you have herd immunity, so most people are vaccinated against something, and it goes under a certain level, then outbreaks are possible. How long was it since we've had a measles outbreak before this one? I mean, there was a period of time where we basically eradicated this in the Western world, and we eradicated it in the U.S. because of vaccinations and because of people like RFK and the lies that he has peddled about vaccination, like his vaccine, what he calls himself, vaccination skeptic or what have you. What he has done is he's driven people into this weird places of the internet that have all these conspiracies, and that means that people's health is on the line. So in the state of New York, we don't play that. In the state of New York, we have standards as far as vaccines. We will maintain those standards, and we will do what we can within the confines of the state to make sure that we continue to protect New Yorkers and their public health.
We could go on because you have strong opinions about a lot of people, but I want to talk about some legislative issues, some
policy,
some budget issues.
Yes.
Do you anticipate an on-time budget this year, or are things in the Senate and in the legislature so fraught that we might not get there?
No, I think that we're close enough to get something close to the first, maybe not right on the first, but I don't think that there's as big a battles as have been in years past. There are a few outstanding issues in the health piece of it that are related somewhat to the budget. Just very quickly, one of them related to school-based health centers. Most of them actually are in the Bronx. And unfortunately, the governor has, back in September, issued an order to change the payment methodology. And what that means ultimately is that there's many of these centers that the sponsoring organizations like Montefiore and others.
So these are school-based
health centers.
So that a health center that may be in a school,
that is in a school,
which gives them access to the children, of course, who need it, maybe even their families, depending on what the issues are.
It's mostly the children, it's mostly the kids, and we're talking about things like dental health, mental health, etc. It's not a school nurse; it's far more than that. But unfortunately, with this change, many of these are going to close. And so we're asking the governor to not make this transition. It would be from a fee-for-service to managed care. Ultimately, it's a payment methodology, and what it means, in the bottom line, is that many of the sponsoring organizations are saying we can't continue to do it if they switch the payment methodology. So we want to make sure that that does not happen. That's by April 1st it has to happen, according to
Is it
something in
an
September.
expense for the state?
No, there's no savings. Not only that, just a couple of weeks ago.
So it's not even a savings issue.
Just a couple of weeks ago,
policy
Gary.
Issue.
Just a couple of weeks ago, Gary, I asked the Department of Health during the budget hearings. I asked the Commissioner of Health, in front of the world. I said, "This school-based health center transition. Could you tell me anybody who supports it?" And he said, "I got to be honest with you. I can't think of a single person." And I'm like, "Then why are you doing it? Who asked you for it? Why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't save us any money, and actually potentially could lead to thousands of kids, and most of them." Kids right here in the Bronx, because most of these centers are here in the Bronx, not just in the city, in the Bronx.
The leadership in the state legislature, of course, the governor, and of course the Senate and Assembly are Democrats. Do they agree with you, or is this not only something that you need to bring up and you want to push forward, but you're going to need a little help to get it through?
I'm certainly going to need help to get it through, and I'm in conversations with the conference so that we can take a position. We refer to it as a one-house budget, which is our response to the governor's budget proposal, and we're putting it together right now. The recommendation is that we include one of my bills to carve them out for fee-for-service permanently so that this problem doesn't happen. And hopefully that will be in the One House.
What is the reason for wanting to do that? I mean, if you had said to me it's going to save, $2.5 billion, well, we can negotiate that. But I'm trying to understand why that would be done. Is it to
Gary,
do a favor for the
Gary,
managed
why are you
care
asking
industry?
me? I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't.
All right.
It makes no damn sense. None. And when the Department of Health, when the Commissioner of Health tells me I don't have anybody who supports it, we can't tell us, they don't claim any savings from it, so I don't understand why they want to do it. That's one. The other one is CDPAP, and this is important.
I was just going to ask you
Yes.
about that. Okay.
So this is the Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program. Now,
that's CDPAP.
CDPAP, yes.
Okay.
And what this means is that basically somebody who might have a physical disability but still has the ability to direct their care can choose someone, maybe a family member, maybe somebody else, to help them out on the day-to-day activities. And it's important, incredibly important to hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. It is a program that these folks would be paid by Medicaid. The issue is the following. Those folks that need to get paid, and there's a fiscal intermediary that's created, so an entity that actually has state dollars flowing through it to pay this person. And unfortunately, the way that it's been structured so far, bad actors have taken advantage of the system. So we need to change it, but unfortunately, the governor insisted that from the hundreds of fiscal intermediaries, or FIs, that we have statewide, that we would go to one. I always thought this was a bad idea, said it since last year, and we are set to make the transition to all the workers by April 1st, and this is the problem. We're not going to make that deadline. And just yesterday, the independent living centers, these are 11 of them around the state, all of them have been working overtime to try to get this done, and they have been very quiet, doing the work, trying to make sure they can meet the deadline. They came out yesterday publicly saying, we're trying, but we're not going to meet the deadline. We need to change the deadline.
And that's the simple bottom line
That's
of
correct.
this is move it back so that if you're going to make a transition,
The transition
there's enough
happens
time.
more. There is a bill that I have that would mean for a more reasonable transition, but even if that isn't the bill, the date itself needs to be moved back. We're not going to be able to meet it, and this is the problem. The statute, the law, says that after April 1st, nobody but that one FI, a company by the name of PPL, and there's issues with that company in other states, but regardless, that company is the only one that can perform those services of being a fiscal intermediary. So that means if you have a worker who
Right.
hasn't made the transition yet because they haven't been able to get anybody on the phone, they haven't been able to get somebody who speaks their language, et cetera, which has happened to a whole lot of people, then that worker is not going to be able to get paid for things that they do on April 2nd. So that's a problem.
And again, I'm always interested in the political dynamic. Is this a Republican-Democrat issue, or it's just getting other of your colleagues to understand what it is?
Well, part of the issue is that it is true that there are some of those bad actors that I talked about, both folks that sometimes created fiscal intermediaries for the sake of having money flow through them without particularly caring about the care that was provided. It is true that they have spent a lot of money both attacking the legislature and the governor and doing all sorts of mailers and all sorts of terrible things. They want to keep the status quo. Many of us, including the advocates and myself, we do not want to keep the status quo. I do not want to keep that person in business.
Right.
I want to create standards so that that person is put out of business. However, I believe that the transition needs to be done in a much more thoughtful way and in a more reasonable way. And the April 1st deadline cannot be met. And if that's the case, then how many people are we going to leave in a lurch? Are we going to leave 5 people in a lurch? 5,000, 50,000?
Wow.
When the state can't even tell us, Gary, how many actual workers or consumers they have in the program. They can't even tell us that number, but it's in the hundreds of thousands.
Is it on the table now, that discussion? Is it
The discussion,
happening?
I am doing my best to push the discussion. Yes, the governor is still resistant, but I am hoping that what happened yesterday is a turning point because, again, these independent living centers who have not said anything criticizing the change, they've been trying to make it work behind the scenes. They came up publicly and said, we got 26 days, we got to get it done, and we're not going to be able to.
You mentioned Medicaid,
Yes.
and I hear, obviously we hear a lot of concern coming out of the federal government about cutting Medicaid. Are you concerned in New York State that Medicaid is going to have issues?
I'm deathly afraid.
Deathly afraid.
Deathly afraid. The federal government, as I stated earlier, is not only attacking our basic democratic institutions and trying to destroy the civil service at the federal level, but as it relates to the funding that comes to states, that is an enormous one. We have, not only do we have an incredibly big Medicaid program, a robust Medicaid program, one of the best in the nation, but that means that there's a lot of dollars that flow here, and they are going to be taking the hatchet to that. And what that's going to mean is the impact on health availability to poor working class New Yorkers is going to be it's going to be obscene.
Sounds
so I'm incredibly
like
concerned.
when if that happens, that's going to take a lot of your time as a chair of the health committee.
Yes, for the moment, I certainly have been preparing for it. I just don't know exactly. I've been looking up because I know it's not a sword of Damocles. It's a big axe up there, and I'm just waiting for it to fall so that I can. I'm trying to do this and this, and trying to make sure that I can protect New Yorkers while I do so.
Senator, we always appreciate your joining us, as you have a record of 22.
Is it 20? Is today 23?
Actually, no, this is 22.
This is
I
22?
believe.
Okay.
We can do the count. But I want to do just something special that's nice. You're going to
Yes.
like this. One of our, I always talk about the cast of thousands around us in the studio. One of them is this young man, Kea. Come on, stand right in the camera.
Right in the
You
light,
can
right in the
fade-
light, buddy.
This is his last day with us.
Oh, where
and
you
the
going?
reason is because he's moving to Japan to take care of his grandmother. And so I just wanted to thank him. He's one of the nicest people, the most talented people. Japan is getting somebody really cool from the Bronx to be able to do all those things. And we just wanted to publicly wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Travel safe.
Thank you, dude.
Any words from the senator?
I wish I knew Japanese so I could tell you. Oh, you too?
No.
Dude, you better start picking it up
I
quick.
know.
All right.
Good luck, dude.
Kea, good luck. You can even stand here and face the camera with me. And we
you
want to
do it.
thank our producer, Rebecca Hemick, our
you
director, Will Guzman, Urelis Encarnacion on graphics, Ian Neville on audio. The editor is Yenelsida Diaz. The cast of thousands who work with us in the studio. -1, he's not going to be here next week. And of course, people of Bronx, we love you. That's why we do what we do. And you know, if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise, and he allows me, I'll be back next week.
I allow him.
Good night. Good luck, my friend.
Yes.
Stay-